Hot out here in the Rose Garden for you? Yeah, well,
Thank you, Mr.
go ahead and
President.
take the tie off. It's halfway down anyway.
Mr. President, yesterday you discussed Osama bin Laden's plans to turn Iraq into a terrorist sanctuary. What do you think your own reaction would have been 5 years ago had you been told that towards the end of your term he would still be at large with that kind of capability from Iraq, no less?
Mm-hmm.
And why, can you tell the American people, is he still on the run? Why is he so hard to catch?
I would say that 5 years ago, like I said, we're going to pursue him, and we are pursuing him. And he's hiding. He is in a remote region of the world. If I knew precisely where he is, we would take the appropriate action to bring him to justice. He is attempting to establish a base of operations in Iraq. He hasn't established a base in operations. My points yesterday were, here was his intentions, but thankfully, of the three people I named, all of them no longer are a part of his operation. My point is that I was making the point, Jim, as I'm sure you recognize, that if we leave, they follow us. And my point was that Osama bin Laden was establishing an external cell there, or trying to, and he's been unable to do it. Precisely my point. That's why we got to stay engaged. Had he been able to establish an internal cell that had safe haven, we would be a lot more in danger today than we are. His organization is a risk. We will continue to pursue as hard as we possibly can. We will do everything we can to bring him and others to justice. We have had good success in the chief operating officer position of Al-Qaeda. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, Ramza Rabi, and there's a lot of names, some of whom I mentioned yesterday, that are no longer a threat to the United States. We will continue to work to bring him to justice. I mean, that's exactly what the American people expect us to do. And in the meantime, use the tools we put in place to protect this homeland. We are under threat. Now, some may say, well, he's just saying that to, get people to pay attention to him or try to scare them into, for some reason. I would hope our world hadn't become so cynical that they don't take the threats of Al-Qaeda seriously, because they're real. And it's a danger to the American people. It's a danger to your children, Jim. And it's really important that we do all we can do to bring him to justice. Why is he at large? Because we hadn't got him yet, Jim. That's why. And he's hiding. And we're looking. And we will continue to look until we bring him to justice. We brought a lot of his buddies to justice, but not him. That's why he's still at large. He's not out there traipsing around. He's not leading many parades, however. He's not out feeding the hungry. He's isolated, trying to kill people to achieve his objective. Those are his words. His objectives are his words, not mine. He has made it clear. He and Zawahiri, the number two, have made it clear what they want. And in a war against extremists and radicals like these, we ought to be listening carefully to what they say. We ought to take their words seriously. There have been moments in history where others haven't taken the words of people seriously, and they suffered. So I'm taking them seriously. Yeah. Jim.
Mr. President, moments ago you said that Al-Qaeda attacked us before we were in Iraq. Since then, Iraq has become much less stable. Al-Qaeda has used it as a recruiting tool, apparently with some success. So what would you say to those who would argue that what we've done in Iraq has simply enhanced Al-Qaeda and made the situation worse?
Oh, so in other words, the option would have been just let Saddam Hussein stay there. The question is, should we not have let Saddam Hussein in power? And the answer is absolutely not. Saddam Hussein was an enemy of the United States. He'd attacked his neighbors. He was, paying Palestinian suicide bombers. He would have been, if he would have defied. And by the way, cheating on the UN oil for sanctions program, oil for food program. No, I don't buy it. I don't buy that this world would be a better place with Saddam Hussein in power. And particularly if, and I'm sure the Iraqis would agree with that. See, that's the kind of attitude. He says, okay, let's let him live under a tyrant. And I just don't agree, I obviously thought he had weapons. He didn't have weapons. The world thought he had weapons. it was a surprise to me that he didn't have the weapons of mass destruction that everybody thought he had, but he had the capacity at some point in time to make weapons. It would have been a really dangerous world if you had the Iranians trying to develop a nuclear weapon and Saddam Hussein competing for a nuclear weapon. You can imagine what the mentality of the Middle East would have been like. And so the heart of your question is, shouldn't you have left Saddam Hussein in power? And the answer is no. And now that well, that's really the crux of it. And let me finish, please. I'm on a roll here. And so now that we have, does it make sense to help this young democracy survive? And the answer is yes, for a variety of reasons. One, we want to make sure that this enemy that did attack us doesn't establish a safe haven from which to attack again. Two, the ultimate success in a war against ideologues is to offer a different ideology, one based upon liberty, by the way, embraced by 12 million people when given the chance. Thirdly, our credibility is at stake in the Middle East. There's a lot of Middle Eastern nations wondering whether the United States of America is willing to push back against radicals and extremists, no matter what their religious basis may be. And so the stakes are high in Iraq. I believe they're absolutely necessary for the security of this country. The consequences of failure are immense. Yeah.
So there was no choice between the course we took and leaving Saddam Hussein in power. Nothing else that might have worked.
Well, we tried other things. As you might remember back then, we tried the diplomatic route. 1441 was a unanimous vote in the Security Council that disclosed, disarm, or face serious consequences. So the choice was his to make. And he made a choice that is, subsequently caused him to lose his life under a system that he wouldn't have given his own citizens. Now, we tried diplomacy. As a matter of fact, not only did I try diplomacy, other presidents tried diplomacy. Let's see here, John.
Thanks, Mr. President.